All right. Real happy to talk to my next guest on the Sports Card Shop at Moco guest line. He's the creator of the NextGem app, but done a lot more than that too. I want to talk about various things this next gentleman has done. And hey, he's a collector as well too. So without further ado, Scott Wright, welcome to Sports Card Nation.
Thanks so much for having me, John. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for being here. We're going to get into next gem here, but I want to talk about, it's like I told you even before we start recording, it's kind of the standardized, first time on the pod kind of question, like kind of your start in the hobby with baseball cards, sports cards. Kind of take us back to where it all started for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in 1979. So I started collecting cards in the late 80s. And I was that classic case. I was the kid setting up as 10, 12 years old. I was setting up at the VFW, buying cards for a quarter, selling for $1, and kind of funding my hobby that way. Whenever the family went on a trip out of town or on a vacation, I was finding that local card shop to stop into. So I was just cards were my life as a kid. And then towards the end of high school, like I'm sure you've heard a million times before, the common story, I kind of fell out of it as I started to go to college. I continued to buy a little bit in those early days of eBay, just kind of personal collection stuff. But unfortunately, in the late 90s, I wasn't collecting those precious metal gems, credentials, rubies, all these super rare valuable cards. I wouldn't have pulled them from a pack anyways back then, but yeah, I got out just before that time. And then I got back into the hobby back in just about 5, 6 years ago. So my career was I covered the NFL draft, and through that, Panini America actually sponsored my Senior Bowl coverage, which is a big All-Star game down in Mobile, Alabama every year. So what they would have me do is open packs of cards and shoot videos with Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, Debo Samuel, Justin Herbert. About 100 of these types of guys I got to open packs with, talk about cards, and through that, I kind of rediscovered my passion. So that's how I kind of got back into the hobby. But really, my roots go back to pretty much mid to late 80s.
Yeah, I'm gonna make you feel a little bit younger, and myself feel a little bit older. You talked about being born in '79. That's when sort of my hobby journey started on my side of the fence. Now I was young at 7 years old, uh, but I actually you mentioned something I want to also touch on too. I did my first show at 15, and I was looked at as like, I got a lot of weird looks, and people would come to my table and say, "Hey, I'm interested in this card, but let me know when your dad's back. I'd like to negotiate a price, and yet it's my stuff." And I just heard you mention you were, am I right? You were setting up 10, 11, 12 years old?
I did, yeah, absolutely. And one of my proudest moments is my dad. We owned a variety store when I was little, Ben Franklin. So my dad was, a businessman, and he knew I collected cards. But up until a certain point, he was always like, "Oh, it's a fun little hobby." But then he went with me to one of these card shows where I set up, and he saw me go to one side of the room and buy just a big lot of cards for a quarter each, and then like an hour later sell them for $1 each. And as a kid, 10, 12 years old, I still remember how impressed he was and like how proud he was. Like, oh, it's like a light went on for him. And that's what I always say too. Like when I see all these young people at card shows and at card shops, it absolutely warms my heart because it's teaches such incredible life lessons. And I'm sure you agree with all this too, John. I mean, it teaches you how
Yeah,
to talk to people, teaches you how to negotiate, manage
yeah.
money. The lessons just go on and on and on. So I love it when I see these young people wheeling and dealing at card shows, and especially when I see the parents following them around who have no idea about cards, but they're there supporting their kid because my parents did the same thing for me. So I always make sure to stop those parents and let them know that it's going to pay off. Those kids are going to appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm people listen, I'm a huge kids in the hobby guy. I think it's that's where I started, and you made some great points in the fact, and I'm a school teacher too. There's stuff you can learn, being a dealer at a young age that I hate to say it, but school doesn't teach you all this stuff. Socialization they do, but maybe making change, the business, knowing, hey, I've got to buy at the right price to come out here okay, and stuff that, or either they don't teach in school or they don't spend as much time on it as they could. And I think it's a great lesson to learn, and socialization is a big one. And I'll tell you the truth, when I did my first show as 15, and I've said this on this show, is I was a shy kid, so I didn't have a lot of bedside manner or salesmanship, if you will. I was fortunate. I just had good enough inventory where I still did okay. Were you kind of were you an outgoing kid? Did it come naturally to you as a young dealer like that?
Yeah, I always call myself an introverted extrovert. I put on a show, but I am kind of quiet by nature. But you can't be, right. When somebody comes up to your table, hey, how's it going? And you kind of
Yeah.
strike up that conversation. So, and I think too, like you say, they teach you some of that stuff in schools and stuff, but it's different when it's something you're passionate about, right? That you love, that you're out in the real world doing. It's kind of a different type of experience too. So obviously great things at school. I mean, school teacher, John, I mean, can't give enough credit to you. One of the most underappreciated professions, and which shouldn't be, but yeah, I mean, it's a great tool for young people. And anybody who says the hobby is dying, go to a card show and look at all the young people that are there.
Yeah, no, it's I think we do have people leave, but for everyone that leaves, there's two people coming in. So it's like a turnstile, right? And the hobby will never die. It will have its ebbs. It will have its ebbs and flows, and it's always that's not a new phenomenon. So
No.
um, technology's kind of new phenomenon. We're going to talk a little bit what you're doing on that side of things, but I want you mentioned covering the draft for the NFL. I'm a huge NFL guy. I definitely want you to highlight what you did there, because it's very cool. Like you said, you even got to do a little work with Panini, opening some stuff with some of those players. But kind of talk about your career on the football side of things as well.
Yeah, the other great passion of my life, along with cards, has been the NFL draft. And back when I was in high school in the late '90s, I started one of the first NFL draft websites out there. And at that time, it was just on an American Online website address. Now it's Draft Countdown. And I was able to run that for 20 years. And I had no intentions of it going that long when I started. I knew I was going to go to college for sports journalism. So it was just a way that I could put my mock drafts out there and practice my writing. And I vividly remember my very first mock draft that I published was for the 1997 NFL draft. And I had the Jets taking Peyton Manning, '1 overall. Of course, Peyton Manning went back to school for his senior year. The Jets traded that pick, and the rest is history. But just to kind of put in perspective, yeah, '97 was when I first started the website, and I kept it going all throughout college. And by the time I finished college, at that point in the journalism field, what you would do is you'd go work in a newsroom at a newspaper in the early 2000s. And I kind of saw the way the newspaper industry was
Yeah.
trending. And I thought, well, the website's gotten popular enough. Maybe I could do this website. And I did it for 20 years. And I was living the dream, right? I was watching, talking, writing about football for a living. So it would have taken something pretty special for me to kind of pivot. But when the opportunity for NextGem came along to go back to my first love and come full circle and get back into cards officially, it was like probably the one opportunity that would have pulled me away from the NFL draft.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm a little jealous. You getting to do that. I'm a football guy. Now, I'm going to ask you a question I kind of think I know the answer to. Football fans, including myself, can be very passionate. That might be a nice way of putting it in some cases. Did you get a lot of people when you published a mock draft or an opinion on a player? Did you get a lot of people like come at you like, oh man, that's all messed up. They're not gonna they don't need wide receivers as bad as you think, or that guy's not as good as you're touting him. Did you get a lot of that kind of stuff from being like I know happens?
Every single mock draft. But that's part of the fun of it too, right? Because nobody has the answers, right? We don't get the
Yeah,
answers for 5 years after the fact. So everybody's kind of guessing. And I always said, to be like cover the NFL draft, you have to have a certain degree of self-confidence, right? That you're right, even though you're not going to get the answer for a long time. And of course, I had my hits and misses just like everybody else, but
yeah,
I did pretty well. If I was an NFL GM, my track record would have been better than most. But you learn, right? Even the ones you missed on, you learn lessons from it, and you don't make those mistakes again. But yeah, absolutely. You've seen a lot of prospects and a lot of things in 20 years with the draft, but yeah, it was a blast, and in fact, the Senior Bowl's coming up. It's draft season now. The NFL season's wrapping up, and everyone's going to turn their attention to the draft now. It's draft season.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm a like I say with football, there is no off season. There's the season where games are being played, and then there's the other part of the season where rosters are being formulated and made, and the future foundation being laid. And I'm a huge Steelers guy. Not a great year for us, and now, like you said, the mock drafts are starting to trickle out. And anytime I see the Steelers guys do their version of the Steelers draft, I always open those up. Most of the time I'm shaking my head like either I hope this is not right or I don't know how close this person really covers the Steelers and the holes that they have. Because I saw one in particular that had them like picking three wide receivers. I'm not saying they won't pick a wide receiver, but I'd be beside myself if they actually picked three in this coming draft. But that's that's the fun of it, right? Is kind of comparing notes or opinions, and the fact that I disagree with that particular mock draft means to that the gentleman that wrote it means I read it, and he's probably at least happy. Like, maybe not the shaking my head part, but the fact that I read it and gave him the time. So awesome, awesome that you get to do that, and very very cool. And I know before we get into next gen one, I know you're a big Chuck Knobloch guy. Kind of talk about how did that happen?
Yeah, that was my guy as a kid. That was my favorite player. And I tried to emulate him in little league, and as a big guy, I didn't quite have that range to be a second baseman like Chuck. But yeah, he was my guy. And when I think of collecting cards as a kid, the card I think of is that 1990 score Chuck Knobloch rookie card. That's the first thing that comes to
Yeah.
mind. I have the PSA 10 of that. And actually, he signed autographs at the National a couple years ago in Chicago, so I got to meet Chuck, and I had a shirt made wearing my PSA 10 rookie card of his. So I got a picture of him holding the card, then me with the shirt with the card, and he probably thought I was a stalker or something. But yeah, it was definitely fulfilling a childhood dream to finally meet Edward Charles Knobloch and cross that off the list.
What was it? I mean, what was it that drew to asking that question? What was it that drew you to him, and why he stood out and became that guy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't know if I have a perfect answer for it. I definitely had a type, like scrappy little players. Like I also like Bobby
Yeah,
Hurley in basketball at Duke. So I
yeah,
definitely had a type. But I think just too, as a young kid, Chuck Knobloch he was a little smaller player. He was kind of squatty when he batted. He got
yeah.
really down low. So maybe that was part of it. But yeah, for whatever reason, like I was just drawn to him. And of course they won the World Series his rookie year in 1991 when I was
Yeah,
11 years old. So it was just kind of that perfect timing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense. And scrappy guy, heck of a player, and a hitter, defensive player too. A lot of people sort of remember the yips part, but he was a heck of a defensive player. But you take
Indeed.
that sort of that time frame away. He could field and hit. So you know. Not a bad guy to look up to, and I saw the picture that you mentioned, and you might have looked up to him during his playing days, but he was looking up to you in the picture. So I thought that was interesting to say the least. But it's those stories, right? The why we have certain players or athletes or people that we admire or look up to, and I love those stories because a lot of times the hobby stories itself are some kind of similar how we got in the hobby, maybe go away from it for a little bit, then come back. But the players we admire, those stories are all individual, and I love asking when someone has a specific player. I always like to ask. So,
Yeah. And I tell you what,
good to
that
hear that.
1990 score PSA 10 I have, it's a $50 card, but that's my coffin card, right? I'm never parting with that
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and I always say this on the show. There's something about rookie cards where they have those big facial close-ups, like the Griffey, the Mattingly '84 Donruss, the Griffey Upper Deck. There's a little more besides being their rookie card. There's a little more allure because you don't see those all the time. A lot of times you see the further away or on the field action shots, but to get that close up, you almost feel
Yep.
like you get to know them a little
Like the
more than
52
if it
mantle
was.
kind of too, right? One of the
Yeah,
most iconic
yeah,
cards. That's
52,
I wonder if
a lot
that
of the
yeah.
53 top set. Yeah, there's something to be said about, Walter Payton in football with his rookie is with his helmet off, and you can see, his whole face, and I think there's just an allure, and then you add the fact that it's also his rookie card, and so it's already sort of in demand on that alone. I just think that it brings even more attention to it. So I got to ask you, you got NextGem. It's doing a lot of things. I want to start with, like, when did the idea first, and when did you first come up with, like, hey, I can do this, and I can probably do it better than what stuff that may already be in existence. When did that first thought first cross your mind?
So the very first kernel happened kind of late 2020. We were up north, as we call in Minnesota, for a guys' weekend at the cabin, and a bunch of us were collectors, and we're talking about our cards, and we were kind of just ruminating about some of the problems and troubles we were having in the hobby that we were experiencing. And a lot of them had to go back to tech. You talked about how it's kind of a different world than when we were collecting as kids back in the 80s and 90s, and but we're starting to see tech leverage for the card world, but not fully yet, especially back then a few years ago. So we thought, man, maybe there's some of these problems that we're experiencing that others are experiencing as well, and maybe we could address them. So at that point, we kind of just started researching. We started talking to others and just kind of validating the idea to make sure that others were experiencing similar problems. And we officially started NextGem in, I think, March of 2021. So yeah, now we've been going for a couple years now. We've been in the App Store since July 2022, open wide for anybody to download in the Apple App Store. And just making really good progress. We're really proud about not only the number of cards that we have coming onto the platform. I think we're coming up on 60,000 cards, but just the degree of quality. We have some really special cards that you won't see anywhere else. We have a Michael Jordan. One of our members on the app has a Michael Jordan Ultra 1 of 1. Just on and on. These special cards. A lot of these precious metal gems. We have a Grippy's precious metal gem. So we're really proud of not only the cards that are coming onto the platform, and it's fun to look at them, but the people who own those cards. And we're really been focused on building this community and ecosystem of awesome people and their cards.
Yeah, it's awesome. And one thing I know I mentioned this to you before we went live with recording. Everyone thinks, like, that you get a thought or an idea in your head, and that's awesome, right? More people should do that, and dream big and be ambitious. But when you come up with a great idea, right? I mean, it's great, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's not always smooth sailing. Talk about what you can share, some of those difficulties you've had in getting to where you are at this point that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's difficult with startups. So early on, we were very deliberate with our research and kind of measuring twice, cutting once, and so absolutely, we're definitely focusing on that, and we can talk about some of our features and some of the tech we've developed, but I guess I would point to that. Early on, some of the frustrations were just the technical. We wanted things to go faster. We wanted to have them working perfectly right away, but it takes time. I think back to the National in Chicago back in 2021. At that point, we got one of the first versions of the app. And my colleague and I were in our hotel at the National, getting ready for the National start, and we're in the gym because that had the best lighting, and we're on the mat in the gym taking pictures with our phone, testing the app, the very first version of the app. So those moments are always special. I'm going to look back at those, and even though they were maybe a little bit more lean times and frustrating, but I mean that's part of the journey and what makes it so fun, and it helps you appreciate when things start to go so well like they are now, and you start to get that traction. So but no question, it can be a roller coaster, and you're right. It's not always puppy dogs and ice cream every step of the way. But at the end of the day, I always say it's not like I'm out digging ditches, right? Even the worst days
Yeah,
are the best days for most because I'm working in cards.
yeah, no doubt, and you're passionate. It comes across. This is a space. Let's be honest. I'm not going to mention any other names, but it's a space with some other entrants, jockeying for position, if you will, or competing in the space. I guess two pronged question here, Scott, does that make it difficult? But I've heard other people answer that question and say, you know what? No, that pushes us that drives us to be better. It makes us more competitive, keeps us more focused. If we were sort of the only one doing things like this, maybe we get complacent or a little more laid back when we didn't need to be. So that, I guess that's my question to you as well. Is it difficult? It's a space that sort of seems like there's a new entrant every few weeks, if not every week. And your thoughts on that. I've often said on this show, I don't know if everyone makes it. I don't root against anyone, obviously, but there's only, it's like a pie, and you want to get as big of the cut of it as you can. Just kind of, along those lines with, other companies trying to get a foothold here and what you're doing. Some of the thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're definitely right. A lot of companies are coming into the market now, and I think it's great. I think there's room for everybody, in part because it is such a large community of card collectors. There's a lot of pent up demand because, as I said, from say like the mid '90s to just recently, the companies that you thought maybe would have been innovating and doing some of this stuff simply weren't. I always go back to what's the biggest marketplace for cards? eBay. What's the biggest social media? Instagram. Neither of those were developed for cards. They were just co-opted by us because there weren't better alternatives, right? So there's plenty of
Yeah.
room for everybody out there to to have a place here. But also too, I think we have a pretty different approach, which I think than a lot of people, which makes me feel really comfortable despite a lot of competition. We're really leaning into the social aspects. A lot of people are working on market price and or marketplaces, vaults, things of that nature. But we're really kind of helping people optimize some of these other avenues, whether it be selling off a major marketplace. Maybe it's leveraging the incredible deals and cards that are available on social media if you can get them in front of the right big enough audience and the right audience. So we're kind of focused on helping people do that, and even though you have all these different platforms, nobody's really kind of focused on maximizing what can be done on social media. And I mean, as well as anybody, John, lots of cards get sold at card shows and on eBay and all the different marketplaces, but just as much, if not more, happens off eBay. And we want to kind of help the people that are doing those deals and not even just do deals, just manage their collection in general. Just have one source of truth where if you're trying to make a trade, here's my link. Here's what I got. It's fully searchable, sortable, filterable. No more paging through your camera roll, endlessly trying to find that one picture of a card that you're looking for. So those are a handful of the problems we're trying to solve. But at the end of the day, everything that we're doing just comes back to being a hobby helper. We're kind of agnostic. We want to help people. If you want to succeed on a marketplace, we want to help you do that. If you want to succeed selling on social media, we want to help you do that. We want to be kind of the tool in the community to help you thrive in the hobby.
You mentioned something I think that I definitely want to, it kind of goes without saying, but for as big as eBay is, and like you mentioned, I mean, it's not a debate. They're the number one marketplace, just in general, not just sports cards, but definitely in that space too. But what's the big complaint with eBay, right? When you sell something, right? The fees, right, that come out of your sale, right? And people, it's like everything else in life is going up right now, and so anytime you can make a sale on a platform where 10, 15, 20% gets taken out, where that doesn't happen, right? That's a great alternative. And I think if more of these sort of offshoots, without these fees, you might see eBay have to make a decision. Hey, we need to lower. We're not getting as many cards listed here. We might have to lower our seller's commission down. So competition brings out the best, and ultimately the consumer. Hopefully, the way it should work, the consumer wins the day. But free is always, you can't get any better than that, as I always say. So
And
I've heard you.
just one other
Yeah, go
thing,
ahead.
John. Sorry not to butt in, but just one other
Yeah.
aspect of that too is finding these cards, right? I mean, right now, if you add up all the cards that are on a major marketplace for sale right now, it's only a small fraction of the universe of cards. If you're looking, like for example, I'm collecting this Fleer Brilliance Gold set, and there's 99 of each card, and I'm not going to get them if I just wait for them to pop up on eBay. I'm having to get
Yeah.
proactive, message people. And so, having a place where you can find these cards, they might not be available. They might be in somebody's personal collection, but just kind of surfacing this stock that's maybe sitting in somebody's shoot box or maybe in their safe and it's not technically available, whether it's for somebody to make an offer on or just to enjoy in general. We want to kind of bring those cards out of your closet and shoebox and bring them into the app for everybody, including yourself, to enjoy.
Yeah, that's a great point too. For as big as eBay is, I've bought stuff not on eBay that had zero listings on eBay. So for being the big boy on the block, there is stuff that's not always available on it, and this gives you and the users, right, another chance to acquire that card. Like you said, that 101 Ultra Jordan, right? It's only on NextGem. So there's a perfect example of that. I've heard you speak about it, before, but for those listening today on this podcast, kind of go through all, the bells and whistles of what NextGem can offer users, and some of it's not being done. I'll say it that way, but you don't want to hear from me. You rather hear from Scott. So go right ahead.
All right. So it all starts with imaging and digitizing your cards. And so with your phone, you get HD 4K images. We automatically crop them up so you get quadrant pics of the front and back. So you only take 2 pictures, you get a 10-picture output. We automatically extract all the data off the slab right down to the certification number. So you don't have to do that. On the newer PSA slabs, there's that QR code on the back with a link to the population. We extract that link and make it a clickable link in the card. So if you want to know what the population is, you can punch that and see it. We automate an eBay comps button. So for each card, so you can press that button and it'll show you the latest sales on that card on eBay. And for each card that you scan, it also gets a web page. And we're going to optimize those web pages for search engine to make sure that when somebody searches for that card on Google or wherever it might be, your listing is going to be one of the first ones to come up so people can find that card. So we're doing a lot of cool card specific tech. We're extracting information from raw cards and starting to enter that with a pretty high degree of success rate. Not perfect yet, but it's getting better. And then we're also coming out with the image upload feature. So if you don't want to take a brand new picture with your phone, let's say you have a card in the vault, you can take your picture and upload it and it'll go through the same process. It'll get processed, cropped. And one other cool thing we're doing with the imager that's, I think, really important is it's hard to get card pics sometimes, especially on these newer cards that are so reflective. You get the light burst, you get the glare. So what we've done is you can actually take the picture of the card at a little bit of an angle. You can go to the left, you can go to the right, you can go this way, and it'll automatically adjust it and make it straight. So you can get that perfect angle to not only eliminate that light and glare, but also get the right reflection so it's looking as pretty as it can. That refractor really be popping with all the colors. So a lot of cool card-specific tech we developed to image the cards and get that digital record. And then you have that one source of truth. I talked about that one collection. It's fully searchable, sortable, filterable. You can share that link. You can put it in your social media bio. So if somebody stumbles across you on Twitter or Instagram, there's your link. They can click it. And if they have the app, they'll be taken to the app. Otherwise, they'll be taken to the web view and they can look at all your cards. And I mean, I personally found this really handy when making deals. You talked about the camera roll in the past. You'd be looking for different pictures. Somebody's like, oh, well, what do you have? Anything else? Now I just give them my link and they can see everything and they can tell me what they're interested in. So it really saves a lot of time and just general hassle and back and forth when trying to make a deal to have that collection in one place. And then kind of the third prong is the sharing. We want to make it really easy to share your cards once you have them all digitized. So for each card record, there's a button, you click it and it opens up Share Builder. You can select, I want a Twitter post, I want an Instagram post, I want an Instagram story, I want to send it in a text, email, whatever you have. Let's say you want to send it on Instagram. We have a custom builder with different templates for each type of card. So you can pick the layout that fits it best, front only, front and back, front's vertical, back's horizontal, etc. And then we also, for Instagram, we automatically generate the most relevant hashtags for each card for your post, which is so important. And we're seeing results as low as 30%, but up to 70% increased views on posts with our hashtags. And it's so important, not only just to get the most views, but relevant views. So to make sure if you post a Chuck Knobloch card, I want Chuck Knobloch collectors to be able to find that card. And as we know, with Instagram, the search can be so inefficient. Even if you know a post is there, it's hard to track it down. But with our hashtags, it's easy to find them. So we're really making it easy to share those great images once you've captured them.
And that's cool, just the integration, right? From 2 photos, you have, in a sense, 10 photos and corners, and even no matter what, almost what angle you take the photo to avoid that dreaded glare that we've all dealt with at one time or another, that your app actually kind of corrects the orientation. I mean, that's just cool. And then the hashtags, right? Which I hear here on that. We all know that that's important. I'm usually I have to type them unless I like save, for some of the show promo, I kind of save them and copy and paste. But the fact that you've sort of baked that kind of into the app, that's just one less hassle for someone to worry about manually. You're doing the hard work for the user, and I mean, that's just cool, right? And if it's one less thing for that user to worry about. I liked hearing you say too, this has more than one purpose. This is not just selling. This is, you can just share your collection. You can just strike up a conversation, and the social aspect of it. But also, if you can make a deal or a trade, potentially, that option is there. So you sort of covering a lot of the bases. Sometimes with these, apps or things like that, there's just one mindset in mind, and it's nice to hear you, like sort of do the 360 and think of all that's it can encompass. And not every collector is the same. Some people don't sell their cards. Some people do.
Yeah,
Some
absolutely.
people
And
only sell cards to buy new cards. So there's all different ways to the hobby, and you're. It sounds like you're trying to cover as many of those bases as you can, and that's refreshing to hear.
there really is a use case for any type of collector. We have PC collectors where they're trying to get every card of a player. Well, this is a catalog, right? When they see a card, like, oh, do I have that one or not? One quick search, they can check if they have it on the app. Talked about a card shops. We have a card shop where they had some trouble with lighting. Some of their autographs and their cases were fading. They're like, oh, I don't want to have these super valuable cards exposed. So they have it
Yep.
set up on an iPad on their counter, these beautiful 4K pictures. Somebody can come and look at their inventory, and then they want to see it, they can pull it out. But one other point I'd make too is early on, I'm not necessarily a social media, like I've never aspired to be an influencer or like have 1 million followers or anything like that. But I've really come to see the value of like having somewhat of a following on Instagram, because the cards start coming to you, right? People get to know what
Yep.
you're looking for, and they start messaging you when they see it. So I mentioned that set I'm collecting, and I'm having to kind of go Dick Tracy to look for these cards and track them down. And because I post everyone I pick up on Instagram, I've kind of become a little bit known for that. And now when somebody sees one, they message me. So there's definitely real value in having that following on Instagram and people seeing your posts beyond just maybe the vanity of it.
Yeah, no doubt. I was smiling when you were talking about scrolling through your camera roll on your phone to find that one card. I can't tell you how many times I had to find a picture of a card I took to show or send somebody. And so, when you have a lot of stuff, like you mentioned, it can be almost like a needle in the haystack, right? Or you think you see it, you stop, nope, that ain't it. And sometimes you get disoriented, like I think I went too far. Now I gotta go back. Now I think I went back. So you almost get lost in your own phone, and so it's nice to sort of eliminate that. That's a huge. I can tell you that's a time suck when you can't find something, especially when you need to find it quick, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work out as planned. So
And all these things, they're
that's a
little things,
huge
but
thing.
they add up, right? Going through your camera roll,
Yeah.
going back and forth with 20 messages, trying to work out a deal instead of just sharing a link. All these little things, hashtags, trying to figure out which hashtags you
Yep.
should use. These little pieces of chunks of time, they add up real quick over the course of weeks and months.
Yeah, now you don't have to be. You also, it sounds like you don't have to be a professional photographer taking a pic, of your cards. That there's some, Now, next, if you tell me it takes out red eye, then we're really in business.
We definitely help you get a good picture. A certain level of effort is required in terms of the lighting, obviously, but we're going to help you get there, get the best one possible.
Well, awesome, man. You sounds like you really did your homework and trying to make it the best user experience. I mean, uh, I'll put you on a spot. I mean, what would you say your user count is approximately? I mean, I know it's changing by the day, but where are you around?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're closing in on 10,000 members right now. And like I said, we only opened wide in the App Store in July, and partly because we kept it closed
Yeah.
beta early on while we worked out the kinks. So yeah, we've only been about 6 months now letting people through the doors wide, and we're excited to expand to Android too. That's the number one thing we've heard. There's a huge demand. All the Android users are asking us when can we get on NextGem. So sooner rather than later, we're
Yeah,
definitely here that. And
you're talking to one of those guys there too. So I'm an
yep,
Android guy,
and
and
we
I'm
want
looking
we want
even
you and
after
all your
talking.
awesome cards on there.
Yeah, and even here, like I knew a lot about it before bringing you on, but and then hearing you talk about some of the other stuff too, I can't wait to play around with the app, and it's like a car, right? You want to take it out for a spin. You mentioned the Nationals, kind of where you launched in Chicago in 2021. I mean, how helpful was that? Was going there like good for next gen? Was it and I guess piggybacking off that, I'm assuming we'll see you in Chicago again in this year coming up here in July.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be there again, and absolutely. I mean, I mean, what else can you say about the National? It's just a truly rare experience to get that many of our people together in one place. And as an app, Atlantic City was a little challenging with the internet, as anybody that was there can attest to. But
That's the understatement of tonight's conversation to
you
say the
like how I
least.
put a
Yeah,
soft touch on that and was being nice.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I won't. I was talking to a dealer. It was like it was a big sale, and he said, luckily I had help there because I had to leave the building with the customer to get the transaction to go through, and
yeah,
it was a high 5 figure sale that almost didn't happen because of the internet. Hopefully, and I think they'll work out. Though it's like anything else. I'm picking on them a little bit, but every new venue can sometimes present different challenges. So
yeah.
I'm sure they've probably learned from that on their end, and I'm assuming that won't be a repeat thing in here in July. So
And even with those challenges, it was an invaluable
yeah,
experience, to kind of get the word out and let people know what we were doing at NextGem. We had some members who were kind enough to let us bring with some of their ridiculously rare cards, so we got to kind of flex and show off some of the cool cards that were
yeah.
on the app. So it was in total a great experience. I'm counting the days till Chicago here, and I think we're going to be doing an event one of the nights. John, I'll be sure to follow up with you. You are officially invited. We'd love to have you there.
Well, I appreciate
Details
it.
to come.
All right. Well, Scott, awesome stuff, man. It sounds, it's you're coming at it, I think, from the right perspective, right? Sometimes with some of these apps or businesses or platforms, right? It's sometimes comes from people maybe not in the space originally that don't sort of have their finger on the pulse of what collectors want or need or like to see. I don't think that's the case here with you. You've been in the hobby a long time. You kind of know. It's like you said. It kind of was born from like your own. Hey, we need something like this. I would love something like this, and here we are, right? A few years later, and you put it into existence. But I think it's different when someone from the space already creates something. Then I'm not saying it can't happen. It does happen, but I think there's a little more credence and a little more uh, grassroots with it when it's someone who already knows kind of what people are dealing with, what people want and need. And I think you come at it from that angle, and I think that's a difference maker. And it sounds like, you're not resting on your laurels. You're thinking, hey, how do we, even as we go on, how do we make this even more improved and better? And that's refreshing to hear. So enough of me. I want you to give out your social medias, websites, where the app can be downloaded. No rush. Take your time. Give out all the stuff that you want to get out there.
Well, and thank you so much for those kind words. And it warms my heart that the fact that we're collectors and passionate about the hobby ourselves comes through, because that's very important to us. Because, I mean, we love cards. I live this card
Yep.
life, so that means a lot. So yeah, you can check us out. You can download the app on the Apple App Store. NextGem. Go check it out right now. You can also find us on social media, and we are at NextGem App on Twitter, on Instagram. So you can definitely check us out there. And you can also go to the website, nextgem.com. And a few things you can do there. You can learn a little bit more about the app, but there's also a link to our web view. So even if you are on Android, John, you can still check out all the cool cards on our platform. You can search, sort, and filter. So you can do that. And then we also have some educational aspects on the blog with some tips for how to get those best pictures, how to maximize your social media presence. So we have some use cases to kind of show how some of our members have taken advantage of the tools we offer. So yeah, absolutely. But please check us out. The app is 100% free. There's no cost to download it. There's no subscription fees or anything. Eventually, we're going to look into some ways to monetize down the line, but we're just focused on building this awesome ecosystem of great cards, but more importantly, the people who own them. So please check us out, and we're excited to have you.
Awesome, Scott. Continued success, and look for. I'll check out the website for sure, and anxiously await that Android drop, and definitely let me know when that's imminent, so I can get that in my phone as soon as possible, and take it out for a spin. And definitely we'll talk about that experience on this show and social media as well. Again, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy, and again, continued success. And it's going to be interesting to see where the app goes from here as it grows, and its user base grows. And hope to meet you, obviously, as well in Chicago here. I'm counting the days too here as we approach July.
And thank you so much for having me, and thanks for everything you do for the hobby too, John. We talked about before. You're one of those people who are in it for the right reasons. You're a true believer, and the hobby, you can never have enough of people like that. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. So thanks, Scott. We'll have you on again too.
Can't wait.